Human history is filled with incredible and heartwarming moments. However, it's also filled with scary moments that will creep you out. Number 5. According to scientists, 66 million years ago, the Earth was struck with the Chicxulub asteroid, which has been credited with the extinction of the dinosaurs. The asteroid allegedly created a crater that is over 90 miles wide. The original landing site has since been submerged underwater. However, the events of that day are no less creepy. The crater supposedly is located beneath the Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico. And in recent years, scientists have used cutting-edge techniques to analyze fragments and learn more about what happened on that scary day in history. In 2016, geologists from the University of Texas trekked 12 miles deep in order to collect a core sample. The sample was hundreds of meters long and took teams and geologists working together to successfully analyze it. The head of the project, Sean Gullick, told the Smithsonian, quote, "We interpret this section to represent the first day post-impact, which by definition of the geologic timescale makes it the first day of Cenozoic since the Cretaceous ended the moment the asteroid struck." The asteroid didn't just wipe out the dinosaurs. It took out hundreds of other types of prehistoric life forms as well, and had a huge impact on the environment. Lizards and mammals were greatly affected by these sudden changes, and caused many species to evolve differently to adapt to the new landscapes. The Chicxulub asteroid was a scary time in history, and scientists have estimated that it hit the Earth with the approximate force of 191,793 gigatons of TNT. A force billions of times more powerful than anything humans have ever been able to replicate within our history. Scientists warned that if the Chicxulub asteroid was to fall to Earth today, we would enter one of the scariest and darkest times in human history. The asteroid would create air blasts powerful enough to destroy entire continents, as well as spurring volcanic eruptions for decades to come. Number 4. Yang Liwei holds the title of the first person to be sent into space by the Chinese space program in 2003. Liwei had spent decades in training, first joining as a fighter pilot in 1987. His hard work and dedication paid off, and by 1998, he'd been elected to train as an astronaut. Liwei was incredibly proud of his achievements, and couldn't believe that one day he would be going into space. He believed that these achievements would put him in the history books forever. However, a creepier historical event has since overshadowed his achievements, and his name is now known for a different reason. Liwei got word that he'd been chosen for the launch of the Shenzhou 5 flight the day before they were due to depart Earth. Despite this, Liwei rose to the challenge and became the first person to be sent into space by the Chinese space program. However, when Liwei was just days into his maiden voyage, he began hearing a disturbing noise coming from the spaceship. In an interview for BBC News, Liwei recalls the creepy moment, saying, quote, "I heard someone knocking on the body of the spaceship, just as someone knocking on an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. It neither came from outside nor inside the spaceship." He peered outside to see what could have been causing the noise. However, eerily, he saw nothing. He was completely alone on the spaceship, and now terrified of these creepy, mysterious noises. After returning to Earth, Liwei told his colleagues about the mysterious sound, and they tried to recreate it, however, they were unable to. They hit the outside of the spaceship with various objects, and even made sounds inside, but Liwei told them that the sound could not be matched. He even told future astronauts about the mysterious sounds so they could be prepared for them. According to the astronauts of the Chinese space program, those who have been sent into space have heard the mysterious noises too. The verdict is still out on this creepy historical event, as sound requires a medium to travel and space is a vacuum. Experts have tried to debunk the theory. However, no one has come up with a solid conclusion about what Li Wei heard on his first solo trip to space. Number 3. World War II will forever go down as one of the scariest times in human history. The geopolitical landscape of Europe was forever changed, both during and following the war, and it led way to many changes throughout the world. Men and women on both sides fought in this conflict, but there is a creepy story hidden deep beneath the tales of World War II. Not much is known about Gordon Cummins' early life, other than he was born in February of 1914 in York, England. By 1939, he'd enlisted in the Royal Air Force and took great pride in being part of the armed forces and fighting back the invading German army. He often made claims to his fellow soldiers that he came from a noble bloodline and picked up the name the Count. This claim was never verified, and soon after he would find himself with a more disturbing nickname. Cummins used the cover of darkness to his advantage. During the Second World War, Britain would have total blackouts at night. This was to prevent the German air forces from finding them and targeting them during a period known as the Blitz. This was heavily enforced in London, where Cummins was stationed, with people going door to door every evening to ensure that every household had their blackout curtains shut and their lamps off. Under the cover of darkness, Cummins began attacking women one by one, leaving them to be found in the morning when the sun had finally risen. There were no street lights at night, as even the smallest sliver of light could give away key locations such as factories or army bases. On February 9, 1942, 42-year-old Evelyn Hamilton was found in an air raid shelter on Montague Place in London. Her handbag that contained approximately $80 had been stolen, but there were no other signs of anything missing. Police suspected that her body had either been placed there, or the person responsible targeted her inside of the shelter as he knew she was alone. The next day, on February 10th, 35-year-old Evelyn Oatley was found in her flat under similar circumstances. Police now knew that the hunt was on for their man, and for the residents of London, this was one of the creepiest times in history to be a woman. The man, known as the Blackout Ripper, would strike twice more and left fingerprints at the scenes, which police analyzed and noted that he appeared to be left-handed. On February 14th, Cummins assaulted Greta Hayward as she was walking through Piccadilly Circus. Thankfully, Greta was able to escape, and in the ensuing chaos, Cummins left behind his RAF-issue gas mask. The gas mask was handed over to the police, and finally, they had their first break in the case. The police consulted the RAF, who informed them that the gas mask belonged to Gordon Cummins. 2 days later, Cummins was arrested and charged in connection to the crimes. After deliberating for just 35 minutes, the jury found Cummins guilty on all counts after fingerprints found at the scene matched his. Number 2. George Washington is one of history's most pivotal figures, and his actions changed the course of modern American history and politics forever. However, did you know that there's a creepy historical moment linked to George Washington that very few people talk about? Following his passing on December 14, 1799, people across the country mourned the loss of their first ever president. Washington had changed the course of American history a great deal, and while he may not have been popular with everyone, one thing is for certain, and that was that he was known to all. Washington had made a promise that he would see in the year 1800 with his people, and vowed to never break that promise. Sadly, he passed just weeks before he was able to make this come true. Naturally, his wife was heartbroken, but so too was another person, Dr. William Thornton. Dr. Thornton, the man who designed the United States Capitol building, was also a physician and wanted to use his skills to bring his dear friend back to life. This would give way to one of the creepiest moments in US history. Dr. Thornton believed that he could resurrect Washington and bring him back to life safely. The doctor had been called to Washington's bedside shortly before his passing. However, by this point, there was nothing he was able to do for him. According to Dr. Thornton, Washington's passing had been a combination of a loss of heat, air, and blood, so in his mind, the same things could be used to bring him back. He first planned to thaw out Washington's body by submerging it in warm water. Once this part was complete, he would pump air back into his lungs. The last step was to give Washington an infusion of hot blood. Thankfully, Dr. Thornton was stopped by concerned colleagues before he was able to go through with his plan. Number 1. It's no secret that the Victorians were fascinated by the morbid and macabre, and they're responsible for their fair share of creepy history. There's one particular practice that gained popularity during the Victorian period that might just leave you creeped out. The practice of mourning jewelry predates the Victorians by around 200 years, as the Georgians are to be credited with the invention of mourning jewelry. However, it never really took off amongst all classes of society until Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was heartbroken at the passing of her husband, Albert, and decided to use a Georgian method to create a keepsake of him. As previously mentioned, mourning jewelry was created by the Georgians. However, everyone saw Queen Victoria wearing some, and they wanted to recreate it for themselves. After Albert passed, Queen Victoria had a lock of Albert's hair made into a brooch. This quickly became a trend with people of Victorian England, making their own, complete with macabre designs. The hair would be placed into the middle of the brooch that was encased with either glass or another clear material. The brooch would often be made of jet, a type of coal, although other materials were used for those who were unable to afford it, with richer families displaying their status by using precious metals and gems. The demand for these brooches became so high that tons of hair had to be imported to keep up with demands, as most families were unable to obtain locks of hair from their own past loved ones. Historians have estimated that 50 tons of human hair were imported into England every year by the mid-19th century. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knots, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.